Welcome to another episode of the Modern People Leader. Tony, we're so glad to have you. How you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm excited to be a part of this today. It's a great way for me to wrap my Friday.
Yeah, same. Stephen and I always say this is like the best possible way to end our weeks. And it feels like we always have an episode lined up for Friday. So happy to be doing this.
And after the
Great.
week we've had, it is definitely
Yeah.
the best part of my week today. So
Listen, it's my job to heat this up, send some warmth your way. So I'll do my best.
We'll take all the warmth we can get. All right, so let's do good news stories. Who wants to go first?
Listen, I'm going to jump out. I got a really good personal and professional story, but it's the same story. Earlier this week, I got a call from someone I consider a mentor that I've been connected to for a while. Kind of out of the blue, like we keep in touch sporadically, but it was Mike D'Ambrose, who's a CHRO at Boeing. And we just caught up. And it felt so good to have him just reach out because he's busy. Like there's a lot going on in that organization. He's driving a really amazing transformation. So to get a call from him and just you hear about what's going on and have him just ask about how my life is going, how my kids are, it's one of those things that you really made me feel proud and also just really fortunate to have people in my life like that are willing to reach out and touch base. So that was it made my day. This is going to make my week, but up until this point, that probably made my week.
I love that. I love that. I journal every day. I'm a big believer in journaling and just kind of putting pencil or pen to paper and the magic that just comes from that. And one of the things, one of like, I don't know, top 5 things that like I list out when I journal is I'm grateful to have such an abundance of things in my life. And things in my life include people that I'm close to, mentors, mentees, all of the above. And so I love that good news today. My good news, I'm gonna quickly jump in after that, is that that we got power back this morning
Yeah.
after a couple of days of no power. This is I'm gonna brand this one the ice apocalypse. We had the snow apocalypse a few years ago, and
Yeah.
that I think we went 4 days with no power and 3 days with no water. And so this it feels like this is nowhere near as bad as that was, but when you don't have power and it's like 40 degrees inside your house, it's good news to get the power back. And the follow on to that is because we have power back, I'm able to record this amazing episode of the Modern People Leader, and my daughter Cora's birthday weekend is back on. Her birthday is Feb 6th, so Monday, and so we have a whole weekend of things planned that could have been compromised by the weather, but I think we're good.
Well,
That's
happy
awesome.
birthday to Cora. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm going to piggyback off of your good news, Stephen. So even though I'm going on about 60 hours straight with no power at the house, I feel very fortunate to have so many friends and family nearby. I was telling Tony before you hopped on, Stephen, that we've been hopping house to house. So, one of Tori's best friends, actually two of Tori's best friends offered for us to stay with them. So we stayed with one of them. And then my parents, we were there all day yesterday doing work from their house. And I don't think that everybody, has that, is in the same situation to where they can just hop around from spot to spot on a day like that. It feels good. So
It's that
hopefully,
abundance.
yeah, that's that abundance, what he was saying. And yeah, I'm just happy to be here recording a podcast.
That's
All
great.
right. So Tony, just taking a peek at your LinkedIn, I did a little bit of LinkedIn stalking before this. It looks like you've had quite the journey in HR, from IBM to GE to Stanley Black and Decker to finally where you're at today as the VP of HR client strategy at Upwork, which I know is a little bit different from your past roles.
Yeah.
Can you sort of just take us through that journey and how that all led you to where you're at today?
Yeah, it all began on a cold, snowy October night in Rochester, New York. That's where I grew up. But if I fast forward to college, I chose Cornell University's Industrial and Labor Relations program, really just because I wanted to do something in business, not having a view for HR. And when I wanted to start getting paid internships, the best opportunities were with HR organizations. That's how I landed at IBM. After that, at Texas Instruments, and I loved it. Like it felt really natural. I love the people I worked with, so I stuck with it. Kept interning for TI, and then when I graduated, went to work for General Electric in their HR leadership program, which was phenomenal. Like the global exposure, all the different roles, rotations that I moved in and out of, including a cross-functional rotation, leading a sheet metal fabrication shop for 8 months, was just a really, really cool job. And then eventually I left GE to join Stanley Black & Decker, my first real HR manager job. And it was global. It was a small business. It was a sheet metal fabrication business that made heavy duty industrial cabinets. We were doing acquisitions internationally. So the job just kept growing. That led to me moving to Columbus, Ohio. I got to focus on, with a team, on turning around Mac Tools, which was a really storied brand. There's a really interesting Harvard Business Review case about what led up, frankly, to when we got to kind of jump in there and try to get things turned around. And from there, that just grew into this broader responsibility for all of our industrial, we called it industrial and automotive repair, but all of our industrial tools sides of the business, the kind that you don't see at Home Depot and Lowe's so much. I love that role. That part of the tool business grew. Stanley had acquired Black & Decker. I got to be a part of that experience and be the integration leader for our business side for HR. And then those two tools businesses combined to make the largest tools business in the world. And I moved over to Stanley's security business. So Stanley Black & Decker had a security business that was mostly based on electronic security, a subscription-based model, different from the rest of the business. And frankly, what enabled Stanley to be in a really strong position to buy Black & Decker after we hit the downturn, because that was a part of the business that actually grew. Now it's again needed some turnaround. So I was a part of that same team. We got the band back together, focused on that business. That's another great conversation for another time. Like driving culture change and turnarounds is a really, really fun topic I like to talk about. But that leader that I'd spent most of my Stanley career with left to become the CEO of a company called Fleer Systems, and eventually brought me over to be his chief HR officer. So it was my first, and right now only so far, public CHRO role. It's roughly a $2 billion business in revenue. And that just took me all over the place. Really global business, really exciting, amazing technology with infrared technology and all the different applications. I did that for about a year and a half, left that business before it really went down this path to eventually get sold to Teledyne. And I had some time in between. And that was a perfect time for me to kind of slow down, because it was COVID. And my kids, I'd gone through a divorce over that period of time before that. It was tough. Like I needed to just stop for a while. And during that period of time, my kids were here in Charleston. I was still living in Indianapolis. The schools closed down here. They're closed everywhere. I had plenty of time on my hands. My kids came and stayed with me for the rest of that school year until schools reopened again in September. And that was like the best experience of my life, because I spent more time with them in that short period than I probably did cumulatively before that, just so focused on work and trying to move up and make an impact and all those things. And so when they came back down here, I moved down to South Carolina as well. It's been a big adjustment, but it's been a great experience. And I started interviewing again for new CHRO or large VP roles. And I was surprised, because a lot of them wanted me to relocate. And I kind of felt like, really, still? Like, I'm going to travel a lot. Why would I need to relocate? But the other thing that really kind of surprised me, it shouldn't have, is in all these conversations, I would routinely talk about how Upwork can be leveraged to transform, innovate talent strategies, because I discovered it and did it at Stanley Black & Decker, brought them into that organization, did the same thing at Fleer. And I was just passionate about where they fit and how they enabled companies to just change the way they think about work. And so I talk about it all the time, and I'd start getting feedback. Wow, you're really passionate about this. Why don't you just go work for them? And I was like, I don't know what I do for, I don't know how, like, I like talking about how companies should use it. I don't know if I necessarily want to be in the HR function for that. I don't know what it's like for that company compared to the industrial companies I've been at. But it came up enough that I reached out to our chief revenue officer and I said, hey, before I went somewhere and then we work together again, and you tell me, why didn't you ever call us? I'm calling you. And that turned into this role. He said, we really need someone to help us unlock HR, which has been a resistor, except for folks like you. And you could really put some energy behind it. And I said, that would be awesome. Like, to me, that is a dream job. And that's exactly what it's been for a little over a year. That's how it's a very much associated with sales and marketing. So it's a different function, different muscles to train. I feel like it took a while to kind of settle into the role, but I can tell you, I'm absolutely loving it. This is a great team and it's a lot of fun.
I love your story, Tony. We interviewed, or we had a Josh Burson, who's I don't know if you're familiar with the name. He's one of the OG HR thought leaders. We had him on the show last week, and he was explaining. So he just wrote this book, Irresistible, and he was explaining how in the 80s and 90s it was all about GE and Crotonville, and every single one of his clients was like, "Hey, we want to do what GE's doing." And I think that was the first time Daniel had heard of Crotonville and just kind of that epic L&D kind of lab that GE created. And it's just ironic that this week you're on the show having been part of that kind of development program. So small world.
Yeah, GE recently announced the sale of Crotonville, and I shed a tear because I had such great experiences at that facility, meeting, they give you so much interaction with executive leaders, and you get to pick their brain. I just had so many really, really amazing experiences, but in the leadership program overall was phenomenal. When I think of modern day HR, this strategic HR, I think of Jack Welch and Bill Conity establishing kind of this standard for how HR should be partnered with the leadership to drive the business forward and be a lot more than a personnel function.
I also love the part of your story where you had this realization that I'm such a big fan of Upwork that I should just probably reach out to their chief revenue officer and see if they have a role for me. And I guess that leads me to my next question. Stephen and I, we're very familiar with Upwork. I don't know if Stephen has mentioned this yet. I'm sure he will, but he's a huge fan of what y'all do.
All right.
Power user.
You may have my next job now that I'm hearing your story, Tony.
Yeah.
So I'm just curious, like, for the random person on the street that's maybe not in the corporate world, how would you describe to them what Upwork does?
Yeah, I mean, I've described it to my children because I talk about it all the time. They see me wear the swag, like they're like, Dad, what is Upwork? And I tell them it's a global talent platform helping to match the right talent with the right companies for any kind of work. And it's really that simple. It's leveraging technology to connect talent with the work that needs to be done. And that work can really fit any definition.
And why should me and Steven be jealous of your day job at Upwork?
Listen, especially you guys should be jealous because you're passionate about modern people leaders. That's like, to me, I've listened to a lot of the podcasts, the questions you ask, the way that you talk to folks about what makes people leaders modern, what are the characteristics, traits. That is exactly where Upwork sits, on the pointy tip of the spear of this massive transition of the way work is changing and how new leaders coming up through the ranks have to embrace that change and think differently about work, not just whether someone's going to be remote or not. Like, to me, people need to accelerate past those discussions. They need to really think differently about the way work is constructed and deconstructed and fluid. And Upwork sits right in there. That's what we do, is we make that possible for companies to tap into that global talent that sits all over the place doing all sorts of really interesting, exciting work, but also because the culture is phenomenal. And I'm not just saying that as a client. That's the reason I reached out to Eric Gilpin, our chief revenue officer, because I loved working with Upwork. I loved working with the people. They were fun to work with. They had really interesting ideas. They helped me think differently. So the culture was great as a client from what I was exposed to. And then it's been even better since I've been here. All capped off with, I really believe we have outstanding leadership. We've got a great executive team. I've mentioned Eric. Sam DiStefano, who leads our enterprise sales, is phenomenal. They're all really, really sharp people, but Hayden Brown, our CEO, I can't say enough good things about her. Like, I got exposure to her as a client, and since I've been here, she balances that strategic priority on product and talent with empathy in a way I just haven't experienced before. Every time there's like a social issue or there's an event or people just need to be recognized, we hear directly from our leader with compassion and sincerity. And to me, that was just incredibly refreshing. And it makes, it's inspiring to me as well.
Well, I'm completely inspired, and I was already trying to see like if there are open job postings at Upwork, because everything you're saying just resonates with us, with me specifically. And as Daniel mentioned, I'm a huge fan and a huge advocate for Upwork. The product and the service you offer, the disruption. I love the tip of the spear analogy, and I totally agree with that. I have literally built entire functions of our startup using Upwork. I want to jump into that a little bit later, but the quality of talent has completely blown my mind. The product that you guys, the network that you offer with all of the tools that make it easy for a hiring manager like myself to find this really sometimes niche. I didn't realize like how specific you could get in Upwork when you're searching for talent. And like I said, we'll talk a little bit more about that later. In addition to all of that, having my mind blown by like the access to talent in places I didn't ever think I could find talent. A former colleague of mine at Goldman is on Upwork's board of directors, Annie Lou Vasquez Ubari, and she is just an amazing person and leader. So I got in many levels, I've got a lot of love for you guys. So I'm super stoked about our conversation today.
By the way,
another link. I actually had the fortune of interviewing Annie Lou for a podcast in private equity last year. So small plug for that, but she was terrific. It was really great being able to talk to her about, her thoughts on diversity and how that's going to grow in private equity, and being that kind of strategic leader was really great.
Yeah, she's amazing, an amazing person that has seen a lot. So we've talked about having her on the show, but our calendars, we can never get our calendars synchronized. Yeah. So maybe we can revisit that. But first, we got a lot of questions for you. And so, in the last 3 years, we've seen the most dramatic shifts in how, when, and where, and with whom work gets done. And it feels like HR teams are more willing to experiment than ever before, whether that's with remote or hybrid work or reducing work weeks or just rethinking, again, how work gets done. And so, and looking at talent in very different ways. And I think it was episode 75. We had Steve Cadigan on the show. He was a former CHRO at LinkedIn. And he made the comment that top talent is going independent far more than we've ever seen in the past. And if you want to get access to that talent pool, you're going to need to come up with different talent models. And I think he referenced Canva as an example of a company that's giving their employees option to either come on full time or as a contractor. And so in your kind of view and the data that you guys have at Upwork, are you seeing that rise of independent talent supported in the data you guys have?
Yeah, absolutely. And you nailed it earlier when you said in the last 3 years, we've seen the most dramatic shift, because that's true. You have seen this acceleration, but it's been going on for 20 years. People have been converting to freelance as a career or experimenting in freelance for a solid 20 years. And it's going to continue on that trajectory. We do a ton of research that really gets into the freelance mentality, the skills that are important. I'll name a couple because I encourage anybody to check them out. A recent report, some of the data I'll reference today, is from our Freelance Forward report released in 2022, Future Workforce report, the Adaptive Enterprise, all really good ones. And I also want to give a plug for a piece that I wrote, contributed to, called Accelerating Digital Transformation in HR. That's all about how HR can leverage this growing talent pool by accessing it through companies like Upwork to help get on the train for digital transformation. Because right now HR is the furthest behind every other function, and I really want HR to kind of speed up, catch up. This is a great way to get started. So we got a lot of great data, and we'll have more reports that will come out. I think it's really valuable to at least check out some of the infographics for folks that are just curious about what freelancing is and how companies are already using it.
And do you guys have like specific numbers on how many freelancers are out there? Is that something you can share with
Yeah.
us? Sorry if I'm putting you on the spot with a very
No,
specific request.
no, that's a great question. Right now, our freelance forward report that I referenced found that a staggering 39% of the US, or 60 million Americans, performed freelance work last year. So they
Whoa.
contributed $1.35 trillion to the US economy in annual earnings. That's up 50 billion from 2021. So that's massive. And a really great report from, or projection from Statista, says that by 2027, just barely a few years from now, it'll be 50% of the US workforce. That was actually a statistic that when I was at
50.
Stanley, yes,
50%. Wow.
50%. I remember seeing that statistic, and that's the first thing that ever got my attention. I was like, this can't be true, because we don't use freelancers. How could it be growing? How could it be that massive? And I don't even know about it, in the arrogant mentality I had. And it wasn't until I started asking around and finding out that other large companies were leveraging freelancers, and we had to get on that ball and figure out what it meant for us.
Yeah, when I think about my future and the route that I want to go on. So right now I've been just doing the podcast full time for a couple of months now. But when I think about whether or not I want to go back to work full time for a company, and I weigh that against doing freelance work more and more, I think that I would really consider freelance work. And I feel like a lot of people are in the same boat. So it's really interesting to see that 60 million Americans performed freelance work last year. Like that's huge. I didn't think it was that big.
And it's just getting bigger and bigger every year, because it's an attractive alternative for careers. And don't think that, announcements of massive tech layoffs don't continue to contribute to folks going, you know what, maybe I'm just going to go to work for myself. I can diversify my income. I can be in control. I don't have to worry about this "you will come to work now" mentality. Like I can be my own boss. Those kind of things just contribute to more and more folks pursuing this freelance and independent contractor path.
And I've got to imagine you're welcoming with open arms anyone who's been laid off and that is looking to begin monetizing their time and bringing in income a different way. What are some of the misconceptions on the freelancer side, or the individual who's contemplating, like, should I do this? Should I not? Like, what is actually required of them to get set up on your platform? What does that look like?
It doesn't require a lot. Like there's not a whole lot of work. I think a lot of times folks that are thinking about it are kind of like Daniel described. Like, okay, I'm doing this work now, or maybe I'm in transition, but I really kind of want to hang my own shingle, as they used to say. And as they start to consider that, they start to really think about, how am I going to find the work? Am I going to start calling all my former colleagues and saying, hey, hire me to do this work I used to do, but as a contractor and for my business? And as they're going through that, they discover platforms like Upwork, and there's a lot of platforms out there. Upwork is really just the biggest. We have a really great market share. And so they check it out, and they realize it doesn't take a lot of effort at all to just set up a profile and start checking out jobs and bidding on jobs and going through that experience. They could do that while they're continuing to do their job search. There's really not a whole lot of effort involved. And I think, frankly, that's part of what makes this transition and this number grow so rapidly, that there's more people that just, it doesn't take a whole lot to just try. They might do it even just to kind of dip their toe in the water and find that they're finding work, it's picking up, and they're not going to pursue a traditional full-time job anymore.
Wow, I didn't realize it was just as easy as creating a profile and essentially putting your name in the hat in the pool of the talent, the global talent that you guys have in your network. And so on the flip side, so now I'm going to ask the flip side question, which I now knowing this is what you do day in, day out, I can't wait to hear the answer. But what are the objections? I got to imagine there are objections from HR departments, from talent acquisition people, from hiring managers. Like, what are the usual hangups or misconceptions on the hiring side, on the company side?
Yeah. There's a few I'll call it. One, that it's a trend. I think a lot of folks feel like this is just something that's coming and going, and do they want to jump on this while it's in the upswing, if it's going to come back down? Whenever I hear the word trend, it is trending up. But the truth is, it's a fundamental change. I always think of, don't call it a comeback. Like LL Cool J 1990, Mama Said Knock You Out. I always think you can't call it a trend, because it is the beginning of a fundamental change that's taking place in the global workforce that isn't going away. So that's the first thing that I think is important for people to understand.
Okay.
Then the next.
Yeah,
oh,
keep
sorry,
going.
go ahead.
Keep going. No, keep going. Keep going. Yeah,
Okay,
I'll dig
good.
into it a little later.
I think that the next is I talk to a lot of HR leaders, and while more and more are considering it, I get the rejections all the time. And the first is they struggle. They think, I can't think of what kind of work we can give freelancers. They're only thinking of short-term, small, low-skilled projects, and they kind of compartmentalize. Freelancers can just do that type of work, quick, easy work, low risk. That couldn't be further from the truth. And you mentioned it earlier. There's extremely talented, highly qualified, deeply experienced managers, VPs, even officers on this platform with incredibly niche experience. That's exactly what you want. You want folks that have studied and gotten deep in this one area, because you want to tap in and access that talent for whatever your project is. So when they think of it just as short term, that's not true. They think of it as just as low skill, small delivery work. That's not true either. Independent talent is highly skilled. They have incredible levels of experience. I'll give you some statistics that support that. Nearly half, I'm rounding up a bit, more like 44%, are working for a large company as a freelancer have a postgraduate degree. And that compares to just 26% of general freelancers. Notably, 64% have bachelor's degrees. In terms of upskilling or reskilling, and I love this statistic, it comes from Deloitte. It's that freelancers continuously upskill, reskill themselves. So companies, especially HR leaders, talk about their strategies to upskill and reskill their traditional employees, but it's hard to do when they're pulling down this full-time job and they're already dealing with a lot of changes. And so frankly, it doesn't happen. Freelancers do it 50% more than traditional workers when you look at like a 6-month span. That is massive. That is absolutely, and it makes sense, because you've got to upskill or reskill yourself to continue to be valuable as a talent that's going to be deployed in all the newest expectations or demands that companies are going through.
And that certainly has been my experience as an Upwork client and customer. Is we have an IO psychologist that works with our team that we don't need full-time. We don't have enough work to justify a full-time IO psychologist for the very specific thing that we have Dora do. And we found Dora. She's based in Serbia, in some tiny little town in Serbia. We had marketing, and she has a PhD in IO psychology. She's probably in her late 20s. And it's just amazing that again, that level, we could never afford that level of talent. Like what it would cost to have someone with PhD in organizational psychology in the US, it's cost prohibitive. It's cost prohibitive. And the trade-off is exactly what, there is no decrease in the level of expertise. And it's been truly amazing. The other story I'll tell is I also had my daughters I co-parent, and I had the girls for like weeks at a time. We would just like go back and forth a week. And the girls would like come in while we were having meetings, and our marketing team is based in Eastern Europe also. Marketing automation in the Czech Republic, social media marketing is based in Romania. And then we have another Upwork contractor that we work with, a freelancer who's based in Israel. And my daughters like couldn't wrap their heads around like how, A, where are these places? And B, like, how are they part of the Workify team? And I had my oldest daughter, she still gripes about it today. I had her do like a Huerta Academy book report on the Czech Republic, because she just was like, where is that? And I was like, baby girl, I'm sorry, I gotta work, but you can research that and look up the Czech Republic and tell me more about that later. But all that to say, like, as a customer, my real world experience has been exactly in line with what you just shared. I want to go back to the first point though, because I agree with you that the genie's out of the bottle, that this is not a trend. This is a fundamental shift in the way that work gets done. Why do you feel that that's the case? And kind of what's Upwork? What do you see that we don't see that kind of supports that?
Well, while there's a lot of recent things that have contributed to what's going to be this continued growth, the main reason is technology has made it possible. I really think technology drives just about all change. And as technology makes it a lot easier for folks to communicate all over the world, folks to connect to each other, to perform or to learn. I mean, technology makes it really easy to learn these new skills really fast and then jump on a platform and deploy it and sell that capability. Because technology drives it and it's not slowing down, we're going to continue to see that push. But you add to that recent things like the pandemic, which brought everybody home, enabled companies to embrace remote work more and create a common space where everybody's having that common remote experience. So now it's not just something a few people do and they're like second-class citizens. It forced us all to figure out, how do we make this work in this environment? And then once you do that, it is really hard to go back, like a lot of companies are experiencing. And it's hard for employees to go back or feel like they're being forced back when they don't see the value in having to show up to an office to do a job that they feel like they can do from home. So it forces us to change the way we think about work and the way we think about offices, which I don't think are going to disappear, but companies are going to start shifting the way that they plan their time in an office to be the collaboration that they expect to see when folks are in the office. So there's a lot of those recent dynamics that will continue to accelerate this kind of change. But I think technology is the biggest driver. And because that's not slowing down, more and more people are going to see that as a really easy way to access companies. And on the flip side, especially as long as I'm working on it, for companies to access talent.
So I just want to tell the audience here, this is not an ad. We're not being paid by Upwork. This is all genuine. So one thing I wanted to ask you about is selecting talent. So, for me, when I've worked with freelancers, whether it was through Upwork or other platforms, it's always felt like the most difficult part of the process is narrowing it down to a few really good options and then being able to vet those options out and pick whoever is the best fit. And I imagine this is this is fairly common, and that a lot of people that are maybe using Upwork for the first time, or maybe they are hesitant to use somebody like Upwork for this reason. Do you have any advice for them when they're looking for talent through platforms like Upwork?
Yeah, the biggest piece of advice I have is something you've heard before. You get out what you put in. So the more you do up front to really think about the outcome that you want, what skills are required to deliver that outcome, and you define that, you make it a lot easier for the talent to self-select themselves out, and for you to look for examples. And lots of times you can post questions that you want freelancers to respond to support why they feel like they've got those capabilities or what their experience is. And so while you're going through that screening, you can quickly check off that they have this experience. You can look at things like what their experience is in other jobs, their job completion rate, things like that, to help kind of filter it down if that's important to you. And then you can look at the responses to those questions. So putting that extra bit of effort in the front end will help you, I think, more quickly whittle down the talent. But it is tough because there's a lot of great talent out there. And then even before you hire talent, you can ask them additional questions, follow-up questions, and they can ask you questions because they want to evaluate the job in the same way you want to evaluate the talent. From there, it's a matter of just picking, trusting that this is talent that wants to do a good job for you, and just getting started.
Yeah, and I can't remember what episode we talked about this on, but Steven was talking about how, that all the contractors that he's working with feel like they're a part of the Workify team. And that wasn't something that he was really expecting. and how they're excited to be as, as involved as he allows them to be, which is pretty involved. And sorry, Steven, you can jump in.
The level of commitment that our Upwork freelancers have, and the sense of personal pride that has come through the work has probably been the biggest surprise to me. It's like, and as a leader, as a modern people leader, I believe that you should treat all your people in a common and consistent way if you really want to get the best results out of your team. And so that could be partly, the leadership style, but that will only go so far, right? It's when you consistently see your freelancers going above and beyond. Like I do believe that there is on the freelancer side the view of like, wow, like this is amazing. Like who would have thought I would be working with a high-tech startup in the US, in Austin, Texas. And so, and I believe that that's part of the magic is like, here we are so far apart, but yet now we found each other, we've matched, and we're doing great work. We're killing it. And it's just an amazing feeling.
Yeah, I think, you're right, Daniel, this isn't an Upwork commercial. And the truth is we don't have a monopoly on all the best talent that's out there. There's a lot of great platforms that exist and that bring this kind of talent to different customers. A lot of them get more and more niche as well. But the fact of the matter is, what you just talked about, Stephen, is absolutely true. The way you engage with that talent is really important. And all of that talent has this kind of customer service mindset, which is a lot different than an employee that has, frankly, sometimes a little bit more of an entitled mindset. But what the biggest difference is, this is a reputation-based economy. So it's not just, kind of, when was the last time you hired someone for a full-time role and you got to see kind of a portfolio of the different work they've done, the percentage of jobs that they started and completed, how much money they've made doing this type of work before, in reviews. Like that doesn't exist.
It.
But that
and when
is,
I see the highly rated badge, it's kind of like Airbnb,
Or the
where it's
number
like
of hours worked.
hidden gem.
or
Yeah.
number of
And I'm
hours
like,
worked. Yeah.
I'm in.
That's technology enables that kind of transparency, which is what makes this possible. And that's why I think it's not slowing down. It's not going to go anywhere, because it's just going to get easier and easier for us to see this kind of value, this kind of transparency, and all of that builds more and more trust from hiring managers, whether you're a small company or a large company, and saying, okay, we can bring this talent on board. And because they want to deliver their outcomes, they want to very clearly understand what your expectations are, and they want to do a great job, so you give them more work, or that you'll recommend them to other folks by giving them a great rating. So that is a different type of talent economy, but to me, it's really incredible. And it's not intended to replace, regular full-time employees, but certainly is a great augmentation.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
And I
get
guess
all excited and then I can't talk.
Get it all out. So on a similar note to just the level of talent that's available globally, we spoke with Kim Rohr on the podcast. So she's the head of employee experience at Oyster, and she said something that really stuck with me around just giving global talent a chance. She said something to the effect of, here in the US, we're the arrogant ones when it comes to this conversation, how there are booming tech scenes in Nigeria, Ireland, how there's incredibly talented people in Singapore, the Philippines, really everywhere, and they're just not being given the opportunities. And she really doesn't like how we think of global talent as just cheap labor, and how that really just devalues their human experience. Like, yes, there is going to be a cost saving, but also you can still pay these people well above market value and change their lives. And I'm sure that this resonates with you, having visibility into all the different customers you're working with and hearing some of the stories. So I'm just curious, are there any stories from your customers that come to mind when you hear this?
I don't think it's a stretch to guess that most of our customers have that experience once they start seeing the kind of talent that's on the platform and actually start working with it. And it certainly there can be a cost arbitrage, because costs are different in different countries, and rates for that talent can be different. But it's also, we got to recognize it's not just a lower cost talent provider. that you're tapping into by going globally. It's because of you're tapping into this talent that's built this niche skill that have become very efficient, very proficient at this particular area, so they can deliver it faster. And because the way the job and the work is designed, it enables them to get the work done in a really efficient way. So all of that contributes to this cost arbitrage that's really positive. But anyway, to get to your specific question, the biggest thing that jumps out of me is this experience we had around the Ukraine war just last year. In July 2022, we launched an initiative at Upwork in partnership with Tent Partnership for Refugees called Opportunity Unlimited. That was amid, of course, the invasion of Ukraine. We found it more important than ever to further our mission in creating economic opportunity so people could have better lives. That's our mission as a company and our purpose. And to me, it's phenomenal. But by doing that, we're able to mobilize partners, our clients, customers around the world, and encourage them to find and hire incredible, skilled professionals from Ukraine, wherever they may be, whether they're still there or they've had to relocate somewhere else. So Upwork customers, including Genpact and Sutherland, were awesome advocates and partners that hired professionals from Ukraine across a range of backgrounds and skills, including web, mobile, software development, customer service, marketing, just a myriad of different functions. And they've since grown and scaled in working with those refugee populations of people that are displaced in areas like Syria and Venezuela. So the success of that initiative shows that when companies tap in and they make an effort to try and hire talent, it could be in this case, I mean, to me, there's a profound kind of purpose among that particular example. But when they make an effort to tap into diverse resources all over the world, they're not only going to find that they can get the work done, they can get it done really quickly, they can find the talent really quickly, but they're going to find diversity of thought, diversity of experience that's going to make their contributions to that work even more valuable. And I think that's an important thing. Like you touched on the diversity, so many companies really care about diversity, inclusiveness, and belonging, and they're not quite sure not only how to just change their numbers within their business, but just how to expose their organization to more diversity, work with diverse talent, with diverse ways of being hired and employed. By taking advantage of that, you truly are innovating your talent strategy while at the same time giving yourself access to talent that if you continue to have a traditional approach, you'll never see. That's exceptional, super professional, super experienced, incredible skills all over the world. And because you're widening that talent pool, that's another reason why you're going to lower your cost to be able to deploy that talent.
This convo is getting me hyped up. So
great.
We're hoping to scale our podcast up this year. And one of our top priorities is finding somebody to help with the editing of our podcast. And I already have a good feeling of where we're going to go to find that talent. So I just wanted to throw that in there.
Yeah, I've told Daniel, so I founded Workify in 2014. And in 2014, I just would never have considered having a kind of startup strategy built around the freelancer economy. I'm probably getting the terminology wrong, but you leveraging a platform like Upwork. And there will be another one sometime in the future. I don't know when, but I guarantee you it will leverage, like, the freelancer talent pool is going to be part of that strategy. And I just don't know why, if startups aren't thinking about this already and it's not a core part of what they do, then they're missing the plot, honestly. And so I've built an entire marketing function using talent that I source through Upwork. I mentioned IO psychology earlier, client success, operations, and it's given us a round-the-clock model to access talent, like I said earlier, that we couldn't afford in the US. And so those are just the benefits that I've received and our company has received, and kind of how I'm looking to the future in leveraging similar strategies, but more as like a core part of the way that we work. I'm curious, what are some of if you think about your customers and clients that are really on the cutting edge, like, what are some of the things that they're doing? Is there anything that you can share with us in terms of, like, what the leading edge companies are that are, like, maybe some might even think they're a little crazy with how progressive that they're being. What's going on out there?
Well, there's a lot of large Fortune 100 companies that have embraced this, that are really integrating it into their talent strategies. And they've started to build decision maps and guides to help their hiring managers figure out, well, when do I turn to Upwork, or when do I turn to freelancers versus a traditional hire? But they're being a lot more proactive with how they engage that thinking. They're doing it as part of their strategic planning process at the end of the year, and they're building it into their budget planning and their headcount planning process. That to me are the most advanced companies. I mean, what they're using it for, they use freelancers for all sorts of things, from building PowerPoint slides to incredibly niche consultants. But the ones that are really advanced have thought of this as part of their talent strategy, and integrated that with their talent strategy, and what I call their talent operating system. Like, they've thought about, okay, as things change, how do we direct and guide leveraging independent talent, partnering and collaborating with our full-time employees. What most companies experience is they'll come to us when they need a Band-Aid. They're like, what, we're struggling. We got 50 open jobs. We can't fill them all. If we don't fill them all, we're going to have this gap. How can we just find some talent that can do these things, at least in the interim? And out of that, that's how they get started. But that's a reactionary model, and they're still in this. They still struggle with that. But yeah, what's the freelance work we can give them? Because all of the work they think of is in terms of, well, but that job has to be done by a person in a job with a role, with a title, and this year's experience. And so once they figure out, they work through that struggle by building some experience, then they start to back up and go, you know what, if we did this intentionally and we planned it, we could do a really good job. We'd relieve some of the burden on our employees. We'd be able to flex when the economy changes, or an economy like this, everything's uncertain. Will it, won't it, recession, all that. When amidst all that uncertainty, companies freeze their headcounts, but then they still have to move forward in objectives. How do you possibly do that without just expecting more of your existing employees? And you should fully expect you're going to see increased turnover if that really is your strategy. But you can flex talent in and out when you're leveraging the freelance talent market. So why more companies don't do it blows my mind. But again, that's why I came to Upwork, because I want to be a part of helping them have that kind of light bulb go off the way I felt like it did for me, and break down some of those barriers.
Well, I can understand why you're so hyped. I really, because you're gonna have a lot of fun in the coming years, and it's great to hear that the leveraging or re-examining, and I love what you called it, the talent operating system, and that even Fortune 100 companies, like the biggest enterprises, are now thinking about this, or at least the cutting edge enterprises are. And I have time for one last question, and I've been talking a lot about this. Do you see a future where internal mobility could be addressed by a solution like Upwork? Like, one of the things that we've talked a lot about over the last few months is internal mobility seems to be a common thing that we're hearing from our guests. And the problem is, like, we've got all this great talent. We also know that our talent is getting younger and younger as Gen Z is kind of emerging and boomers are leaving. And we know how important career development is and having opportunities, but yet we can't see, and we have all these open recs and the various aspects of our business that need help, but we can't seem to connect those dots. Do you think there's ever a world where like a tool like Upwork could be leveraged even for internal mobility?
Yeah, that's a great question. In terms of how Upwork could be leveraged to deliver that, I'm sure it could be. I don't know. But I do think you're really onto something. And what I think you're onto is, as companies build their experience and their comfortability, and they start thinking strategically about leveraging freelance talent and doing it through platforms like ours, they think about work differently. And as you think about work differently, you kind of deconstruct jobs, you get away from the long, old archaic paradigms. It enables a lot more of that mobility, because people can start applying their specific skill sets to projects that they wouldn't be introduced to before because their title didn't allow it, or their
Exactly.
function didn't allow it. When companies start thinking about it in terms of what are the skills I need to do this, and who has those skills, and those skills don't come packaged necessarily with just a degree, some broad degree, or you held this position at this employer doing this job for 5 years beforehand, or 5 to 7 years, or whatever we put, there are these arbitrary requirements on job descriptions. Like, the biggest restrictions from giving people access to things that are going to stretch, grow them, allow them to learn more, and therefore contribute more along their careers, is breaking up the way we think of roles and the way people climb a ladder in different roles into just skill sourcing, both internally and externally. And the biggest thing I think Upwork contributes to that is it helps kind of train those muscles. It helps train people in this new exercise that they haven't done before, but they start thinking about work differently. And when they turn their eyes on how they deploy talent internally, they can, I think, reap the same benefits and give their employees much more engaging experiences that have a lot more variety, that are also a bit unpredictable, and don't look like the typical jobs of today. And that, to me, is the future of career growth. It's like a spider web. It's not a ladder anymore.
I agree. And I think of one person in particular. So when I was at Humu, we had this guy on our data science team. His name's Mark Freeman. On the side, he had his own media / like consulting business called On the Mark Data, where he created content about being a data scientist. From this experience, he got really freaking good at social media. I think he ended up gaining like 100,000 followers on LinkedIn. And something that we needed help with at Humu on the marketing team, which was the team that I was on, was social media. And if there would have been a way to sort of like tap into somebody like Mark, who, wouldn't normally be working on projects like that, man, I think we really could have benefited from that. And I think you're right. Companies experimenting with working in different ways and kind of deconstructing jobs and getting away from the old ways of doing things is opening their minds to how else they can leverage both their internal and external talent.
Yeah, I mean, Darren Murph, Steve Cadigan, David Hanrahan, like the list
Everyone's
of
saying
people
the
who
same
told,
thing. Yeah.
everyone's saying the same thing that we have on the show. And man, I wish we could dig in more, but unfortunately we're at that part of the conversation. Tony, we got to turn the corner and bring this thing to a close. But before we do that, we got to hit up the rapid fire questions. You ready?
Yeah, let's hear them.
All right, let's go. First question: how do you define a modern people leader? What are the traits and characteristics?
Yeah, I think it's leaders that are looking to challenge the status quo. They're looking for and implementing strategies that are disruptive yet productive. They're open-minded. They're following trends in networking, which I think is one of the hardest parts. You're busy in a job. To understand what's going on in the market and tap into podcasts like this are great ways to just stay on top of different ideas, new ideas, et cetera. And then they're prepared to abandon this hierarchy mentality, and they're a servant leader. Modern people leaders have this kind of servant mentality where they enable, empower, and empathize with their talent.
Ooh, +1 all of that. Love it. Next question: if you could go back in time and talk to a 22-year-old you, what career advice would you give yourself and why?
It's weird because it'd be kind of it's not necessarily just career advice. I tell myself to balance better. Like the experience that I have now working for a remote first company and being able to take full control of my own balance is phenomenal. But when I was coming up, I thought I just had to, sacrifice everything for that next role. In a lot of ways, it worked, but I also believe, I think this is important thing, it's just changing about this talent economy in general. I had the capability, the excitement, the passion. I would have found the roles that would get me to the levels I want to get to eventually anyway, if I had focused more on spending time with my family and doing the things I really love and care about. That's what I would tell myself. Hey, don't worry about getting to a CHRO position as fast as you possibly can. You'll get there. Take your time and enjoy the ride.
Oh man, that's great advice. I don't know if it's because I was a diverse employee as well, I felt like I had to work harder. Like I felt like I had to put more in, and like I had something to prove. And then you fast forward and you're like, oh, it could have been done a more gentle way, a different way with more balance. But
Yeah.
I love that advice. I love that advice. Last question. If you could fix any HR people problem with a magic wand, what would it be and why?
I would take that wand, I'd tap HR leaders, and I'd make them forget this paradigm that's holding them back. This idea that we have to acquire talent, make them, own everything they develop, design, or dream, and that's the only way that they'll be the most productive, and that's the only way we can trust them. And it's not just HR folks, it's leaders as well. But I'd have them abandon that mentality, because it'll make it a lot easier to embrace the way that the work is fundamentally changing, and they'll see it as a way to achieve. I like that you mentioned abundance earlier. Achieve this mentality of talent is abundant. Like we saw the work numbers today. The U.S. added even more jobs. We got 2 jobs for every unemployed person. Most of them are in hospitality, but we're nearing one of the lowest unemployment rates we've ever seen. And people are like, oh my God, what are we going to do? Talent's going to get more expensive. They're just going to turn over more. No, talent, you don't have to have this limited resource mentality around accessing talent if you think about accessing it. If you get away from, you have to have this employer contract mentality and embrace more of this lease agreement, you can access talent anywhere in the world with all sorts of skill sets that you need immediately.
Reach. All right. So I know you've worked with, a lot of talented individuals. I'm sure you've had some great mentors along the way. So if you had to pick one person that we absolutely should have on the show, like you think they'll have something to add to the conversation, who would that person be and why?
I have a real hard time picking one.
You can
So I'll
pick
tell you
more
what,
than one.
I'm gonna give you 3 real quick.
Ooh.
And it's all, there are 3 folks. I don't know them all tremendously well. The first is John Boudreau. He wrote Work Without Jobs. It came out last year. He taught at Cornell for 20 years, teaching at USC. I know him through Semper Virens. You guys had Alison Baum-Gates on. I think I love listening to that. I'm an advisor for Semper Virens as well. That book is such a great, like everything I think about the way talent economy is changing and how employers need to think about it, John articulates better than I could ever dream. So I highly encourage people to go read that. And I think he'd be an amazing guest because he thinks critically about the way things are getting done. Another one is Matt Mottola. Matt Mottola wrote The Human Cloud. He has a perspective on the freelance economy that is a lot more from the freelancer. He understands that world, what the talent is thinking, what all the challenges and issues are with every platform. He has a really acute knowledge and is wired into that community better than most folks I know. And the last one, last but not least, no particular order, is Paul Estes. I met Paul through Upwork when we were both clients and he was still at Microsoft. We were on their customer advisory board. Paul shared a perspective early on in this kind of journey for me around thinking about gig work as this augmentation, thinking about work differently and think in a way that it can be taskified and broken up, both for your personal life and professionally, that just really changed the way I think about work. And he wrote The Gig Mindset, and I think it's a great book for folks just starting to think about how they can engage. Paul's also got a great podcast, but I think you guys would love talking to him because he thinks about talent. He doesn't have an HR background. He actually has a engineering background, marketing background. I think you'd love talking to him. He's got a great, modern, open-minded, challenging status quo mentality.
Some fire recommendations there. We're going to have to reach out to all 3 of them. All right. So on to our last tradition of the podcast. So we end every show with one word or phrase close. And who wants to go first? I can take
I'll
it.
go first. I snuck in.
All right, go
I'll go
for it,
first. I'll go first. It's a phrase that I'm kind of combining. It's like my own takeaway, and that is break down the hierarchy. I think, Tony said something to that effect earlier, and it's time. It's time.
Yeah, I'm also going to steal something that Tony said. Embrace the change.
Love it. I can't help but think of don't call it a comeback. This isn't a trend. This isn't temporary. This is ongoing and permanent. And that's why companies need to embrace the change. So don't call it a comeback. It has been here for years and it will be here for years.
Daniel, you need to add LL Cool J's Ring the Bells, like the bells, the outro to this episode, if we could do that, please. Or maybe we need to find an Upwork freelancer to help us with that.
So we're on Instagram and TikTok now. And one thing that I've seen some B2B marketers do really well is they have the traditional video clip of somebody talking for a minute or two, but they add like a hip hop song in the background. And I'm like, wow, the music makes it so much better. So maybe there's a clip that I can create for this episode where we throw on some Cool J in the background.
There you go.
Nice.
Happy to inspire that musical rendition.
Be a good little test for us.
As an old head, I appreciate that. Well, Tony, thanks so much. This exceeded. As you can tell, I'm a fanboy of Upwork. This, to reiterate what Daniel said earlier, this is not a commercial. We're not being paid for this, but this exceeded every expectation I had. And going back to what we started with, man, what a great way to finish off what's been a tough week for us in Austin, Texas. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Hey, thank you both. This has been a real pleasure. I'm excited about it. And I really appreciate and value what you guys are doing to just help get the word out there, the message around how people can really think differently about the way they work and the way they lead. So thanks a lot for having me.
Thanks for coming on.
Guys, have a great weekend.
Talk to y'all later. Bye.
Bye.